Check. Okay, batch counter, please confirm. All okay, shall we start? Audio, video. Good afternoon, all of you. So in the last class, we had discussed about the initiatives taken for disaster management in India as well as at the world level. That was the second unit. So what were the major initiatives taken at the India and world level? In India, the first major initiative was National Disaster Management Act of 2005. National Disaster Management Act of 2005. The second major initiative was National Disaster Management Policy of 2009. Okay, and third was National Disaster Management Plan of 2016. And then the upgradation of 2019. So today was actually supposed to be the last class, but हमारा थोड़ा सा slow हो गया, so I have requested for another class, a short class. So let's see कितना हो सके. So we discussed the important features, the entire setup under the National Disaster Management Act, and then the policy, and then finally the plan of 2016. Okay, what are the important initiatives taken, what are the important provisions of this policy, the objective, and how exactly it is different from 2016 and 19. ये सारा चीज़ें हमने डिस्कस किया था. In the context of international initiatives, the major initiative was Yokohama Conference on Disaster Reduction 1994, then Hyogo Conference 2005, and then finally Sendai Conference of 2015. So basically, as a commitment to Sendai, we brought this plan of 2016. Later it was upgraded. So we discussed the important features, details. ये सारा हमारा बात हो गया. So any doubts from the previous class? Pratik is asking, is there any difference between risk reduction and mitigation? If yes, what is the difference? Say, risk reduction is a method of mitigation. Risk reduction is a method of mitigation. Clear? Mitigation includes all the measures to reduce the impact of disaster. Okay, all the methods to reduce the impact of disaster. That is what is mitigation. जो करना है करो, disaster का effect कम होना चाहिए. It includes prevention. अगर prevent कर सकता है तो that is also a mitigation. Risk reduction is also a type of mitigation. Okay, risk reduction में क्या करते हैं? We know that it is going to happen. We will reduce the vulnerability. We will increase the capacity. We will reduce the vulnerability and increase the capacity. Risk अपने आप reduce हो जाएगा. People will be there during the disaster. जैसे ओडिशा ने किया है. Odisha has ensured that they have trained the people. They provided entire information facilities. सब दे दिया है. They know that they cannot stop cyclones, but people are ready to face. That is what is risk reduction. है ना? Fine. Now let's come to the third part. Disasters in India. So here we are going to discuss the different disasters which are common for India and जो यूपीएससी के कंटेक्स्ट में इंपॉर्टेंट है. जो डिजास्टर यूपीएससी में कवर हुआ है वो सारा हम कवर करेंगे. At the same time जो disasters which are currently in news, which are there is a probability of UPSC to ask questions about these disaster, ये सारा हम कवर करेंगे. Okay, in each of these disaster there is a common framework. We'll start with definition of this disaster. Okay, any particular disaster. Suppose we'll start with the earthquake. So we'll start with the definition of earthquake. Then what are the different causes for that particular disaster, which usually includes natural cause or anthropogenic cause. है ना? The definition, causes, and then what are the measures required? उसके पहले we need to know which are the areas which are affected by that particular disaster. मतलब probability कहाँ पर है ज़्यादा. We'll also know the measures required either to prevent that particular disaster or to reduce the risk through mitigation. Okay, either prevention होगा, risk mitigation होगा, या preparedness भी करना है. What are the different methods? ये सारा comes under measures. So this one we'll discuss as per NDMA. The measures we'll discuss as per NDMA. ठीक है? For every disaster, let's try to see this. And what are the different types of disasters? What are the various types of disaster? Classification of disaster. The National Disaster Management Plan, ये जो हमारा 2016 का प्लान है ना, उसके अंदर NDMA has used a classification. Let's use the same classification. It classifies all the disasters under a total of 5 categories. A total of 5 categories. What are these? First one is geophysical. Geophysical disaster. Okay, what do you mean by a geophysical disaster? See, the cause of disaster in a geophysical disaster is a geomorphic process. A geomorphic process or a phenomena is the cause of disaster. It is the geomorphic phenomena or a geomorphic process causing disaster. Okay, best example है earthquake. What is the process which is causing disaster here? The plate movement. Okay, different types of plate movements in various different types. It causes earthquakes, right? So any such kind of disaster which are caused by geomorphic processes, we call it as geophysical disaster. So in this unit, I assume that you know the basics which you should have known in geography. Okay, so earthquake का मतलब क्या है, क्यों होता है? If it is about cyclone, I guess you know about the conditions required. वो geography का पीछे मैं नहीं जाऊँगा. Okay, because I assume that is taught in your class already. Okay, मेरे बैच में तो मैंने खुद पढ़ाया हूँ, so I know that, so you cannot deny. So बाकी बैचेस में भी I hope it is done. The geographical aspects of all these events, the causes and all. तो बाकी सारा measures हम discuss करेंगे. Okay, causes भी briefly बता दूंगा, but still I am not going to go in detail over that. Okay, now tell me any other examples. You can write this. इसमें तो ज़्यादा dictation नहीं रहेगा. You can write this. The first one, geophysical disaster. Example. So what is a geophysical disaster? These are the disasters caused by the geological processes and phenomenon. Geological processes and phenomenon. इसमें ज़्यादा रिफ्लेक्शन हो रहा था तो इसलिए आई wanted to use the other one. So this one had lesser reflection. And this one is more reflection actually. Examples. Example, earthquake. So any other examples for geophysical disasters? Can anyone tell? Any examples है आपके हिसाब से? A disaster caused by the geological phenomena. What is the geological phenomena? The forces which affects from the earth's interior है ना? Geological. Volcanic eruption, good example. Landslide. See, not all the landslides, not tsunami. Tsunami is different. Cyclone be different है. Let me tell you what are the different types. फिर आपको समझ आएगा. First one is geophysical. Second one is hydrological. Third one is climatological. Fourth one is meteorological. And fifth one is biological. These are the 5 different types. Okay. So we have earthquake, volcanic eruption and mass movements. Mass movement is a geophysical. Mass movements, various different types of mass movements where the movement is happening due to the weathered material, मतलब dry material. It is not because of the saturation of water. पानी के वजह से जो होता है ना, that will become a hydrological. So all the mass movements which are happening because of the weathering, that is geophysical. So what is hydrological? Hydrological का मतलब क्या है? Hydrological is all the disasters which happen due to the change in the level of waters. Okay, वाटर साइकिल से जो नॉर्मल लेवल से ऊपर नीचे होने के वजह से जो होता है, दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल इट एज हाइड्रोलॉजिकल. दीज आर द डिजास्टर which are caused by the changes in the normal water cycle or the overflowing of water bodies. तो यहां पर है हमारा फ्लड्स. इट्स मेनली बिकॉज ऑफ द डिस्टर्बेंस ऑफ वाटर बॉडीज है ना, फ्लड्स हो गया. एंड लैंडस्लाइड्स कॉज्ड बाय सैचुरेशन ऑफ वाटर. पानी के वजह से जो लैंडस्लाइड होता है ना, दैट इज ऑल्सो बिकॉज ऑफ हाइड्रोलॉजिकल. देन coastal erosion because of the continuous action of waves. बाकी सारा नहीं है, आई विल कम टू दैट. कैन somebody tell me the difference between climatological and meteorological? हाँ, tsunami you can include it here. Hydrological. Tsunami you can include in the hydrological, because see, not all the earthquakes will result in tsunami. If every earthquake results in tsunami, you could have put it in geophysical. Of course there is a connection between geophysical also. बट क्लियर कट बोलना, इट इज मोर ऑफ द वाटर लेवल वेरिएशन. वो क्यों हुआ है वो अलग बात है. बताइए डिफरेंस बिटवीन क्लाइमेटोलॉजिकल एंड मीटरोलॉजिकल. व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस? गुड. वंदना हैज डिफाइंड इट इन अ वेरी इजी मैनर. Say meteorological is short term, climatological is long term. Any short term changes in the weather we call it as meteorological. Any long term changes in the climate we call it as climatological. Short term में क्या होगा? It goes for a very short duration. Okay, from few minutes to few days, few minutes to up to few days. That is what is meteorological. And meteorological is short term. If it goes from few days to few months, it is climatological. Okay, किसका impact ज़्यादा रहता है? It is the climatological, because that will be there for longer duration. Right? Any examples of meteorological? Here comes our cyclone. Cyclone is a phenomena related to the weather. Okay, it will be there for few days तक रहता है. And it is mainly because of the changes which happen in the weather. And it is not hydrological. Even though water is involved, it is because of the weather, the pressure and temperature which is causing the cyclone. And other than that cyclones, we have heat wave and cold wave also. ये भी कुछ दिन के लिए रहता है. जैसे दिल्ली में था पिछले हफ्ते, we had heat wave, है ना. अभी नहीं है, अभी कल बारिश भी हुआ है. So just a second, there is some, are you able to hear? There is any discontinuity? Is there any discontinuity? I'm not able to see your response. Just a second. I'm not able to see your response. Just a second. I'll just connect. Just 2 minutes of break. There's some connectivity issue. I will just be back. Yeah. So there was some connectivity issue. Let's continue. So we were discussing about the different types of disasters: geophysical, hydrological, climatological, meteorological and biological. इन दोनों का difference तो मैंने समझा दिया. That is, this is short term, which will be there for few minutes to few days. Okay, like the temporary changes or the short term changes which happens in the weather, like cyclone, heat wave, cold wave, ये सारा चीजें होगा meteorological disaster. And climatological disasters are those disasters which happen in the long term. Okay, मतलब any changes which happen in the climate over a long period of time. Okay, over a long period of time. So that is what we call it as climatological. Here comes the example of GLOF. GLOF. GLOF आपने सुना होगा. GLOF, Glacial Lake Outburst Flood. Glacial Lake Outburst Flood. So this is a type of flooding caused by the outburst of glacial lake. Caused by the outburst of glacial lake. And by the glacial lake outbursts, it is because of the long-term changes which happen in the atmosphere, right? For a long-term change, whatever is happening because of either climate change or global warming, melting of glacier, which takes a longer period of time. ऐसा नहीं है कि 1-2 दिन में हो गया, like meteorological. So that is why GLOF is considered as a climatological disaster. Okay, not only GLOF, even the condition of drought. Why drought is a climatological and not a hydrological? आपने तो बोल सकते हो, you can say यहाँ पर है पानी का ऊपर नीचे होने से होता है. So but I have classified drought as a climatological disaster. Why? Remember, drought is caused due to the lesser precipitation. Precipitation कम होता है ना, उसके वजह से drought होता है. It is not because of the river water rising and falling. If there is a rise and fall in the river water, that will now cause the flood. That is hydrological. But climatological reason is causing the drought. That is, the absence of precipitation for a long period of time causes drought. है ना? So that's why drought is the best example of climatological along with the glacial, lake outburst flood. Then you can also write forest fire. Forest fire is an example of climatological because even forest fire do not happen suddenly. No, you cannot light a fire to the forest out of nowhere. It requires a longer duration of dry period. Dry period should be there for 1 or 2 months. Okay, and the precipitation should not be there. Is that clear? So that forest fire is basically a prolonged period of dryness is causing the condition suitable for the forest fire. It is not just कोई जला दिया तो पकड़ गया, ऐसे तो नहीं होता है. The forest should be in that state, then only. You cannot have forest fire during the monsoon, right? Because forests are not dry, it is wet. So you can write about these two, meteorological and climatological. What is meteorological? Okay, पहले climatological लिखो, उसी को नंबर 3 दे दिया. These are long-lived. These are long-lived. Sorry, these are due to long-lived macro-scale processes. These are due to long-lived macro-scale processes causing seasonal or climate variability. Causing seasonal or climate variability. Example: drought, GLOF, GLOF, forest fire, etc. So meteorological, next one. These are due to short-lived mesoscale atmospheric processes. Short-lived mesoscale atmospheric processes ranging from few minutes to few days. Example: cyclone, heat wave, cold wave, etc. Cyclone, heat wave, cold wave, etc. See, Canada का जो condition हुआ है ना, that is entirely different. Canada का condition is due to a phenomenon called as heat dome. Okay, I'll explain that when we come to heat wave. तो तब explain कर दूंगा end में. So let's see. वो and heat dome is है ना, तो बहुत ऐसे it's basically the impact of multiple factors. Okay, it's the impact of multiple factors. हम discuss करेंगे, उसके बारे में separately discuss करेंगे. Cloudburst is an example of meteorological. Okay, we can give cloudburst as the example of meteorological. And the last one, biological disaster. So what exactly is biological disaster? So these are the disasters having their origin in any kind of organic or biological vectors. Okay, organic vector या biological vectors. Best example, the situation where we are in. Okay, COVID-19. It is due to the virus spread. It's a biological vector. So any such kind of biological vectors causing the disasters, we call it as biological disasters. Okay, example है epidemics. Okay, definition I hope you have written. These are the disaster caused by organic or biological vectors. Example, epidemics. Insect infestation, or animal stampede, एनिमल स्टैम्पीड, यूजुअली एनिमल स्टैम्पीड नहीं होते, इतना एनिमल्स तो नहीं है. वी हैव ऑल ensured that such large number of animals do not exist at a time. एक ही जगह में तो नहीं मिलने वाला है, सो स्टैम्पीड तो नहीं होगा, जस्ट एन एग्जाम्पल. और इंसेक्ट इन्फेस्टेशन जो रिसेंटली हुआ था ना, डेजर्ट लोकस्ट, दैट इज द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ इंसेक्ट इन्फेस्टेशन. दैट इज ऑल्सो बायोलॉजिकल. एपिडेमिक्स तो ऑल ऑफ अस आर वेरी मच फेमिलियर, है ना, कोविड-19. सी दीज आर द 5 डिफरेंट क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ डिजास्टर्स. ओके, 5 डिजास्टर है, 5 डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज है. बट अदर देन दिस देर आर मेनी अदर क्लासिफिकेशन, मेनी अदर डिजास्टर विच यू माइट फील इट टू बी आउटसाइड दिस. ओके, बेस्ट एग्जांपल है हमारा मैन मेड डिजास्टर्स. फ्यू ऑफ द मैन मेड डिजास्टर्स ऑल्सो बिकम पार्ट ऑफ बायोलॉजिकल डिजास्टर, एंड फ्यू ऑफ द मैन मेड डिजास्टर्स कैन ऑल्सो बिकम पार्ट ऑफ द क्लाइमेटोलॉजिकल, जैसे कि क्लाइमेट चेंज, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग, है ना. सो मैन मेड इट इज पार्ट ऑफ दिस. मेजरली बायोलॉजिकल में है, क्लाइमेटोलॉजिकल में है, हाइड्रोलॉजिकल में भी floods can also be due to the man-made factors. You can think of it. Okay, but overall, it is a general classification as per our national plan. But other than this, there are few other disasters which become common between two categories, or which become like बाहर से भी जा सकते हैं इससे. So there is no need to worry about that. There is no strict classification as such. Now, last example is stampede. एनिमल स्टैम्पीड जो यूजुअली होता है फॉरेस्ट में होता है. ओके, विच यूज्ड टू हैपन लॉन्ग टाइम एगो, बिफोर वी colonized the entire earth and turned into the habitat of human beings alone. Stampede is like large number of animals coming together at a time. जैसे ह्यूमन स्टैम्पीड होता है ना, इन द सेम वे एनिमल स्टैम्पीड कैन ऑल्सो कम. इंसेक्ट इन्फेस्टेशन एग्जाम्पल तो दिया था मैंने, लोकस्ट, डेजर्ट लोकस्ट अटैक हुआ था ना लास्ट ईयर, याद है. लार्ज नंबर ऑफ लोकस्ट, ग्रॉस हॉपर्स टाइप इंसेक्ट्स. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द फर्स्ट डिजास्टर, अर्थक्वेक. हाँ, जुमांजी मूवी में था ना. नॉट श्योर इफ एनी ऑफ यू हैव सीन दैट मूवी. बहुत पुराना मूवी है. So that is why I told you there are many disasters which you cannot place anywhere. Okay, these are just the general classification as per our national plan of disaster management. ठीक है, let's start with the first one. Earthquakes. So what are earthquake? बताइए. अर्थक्वेक तो हमने कवर किया था ना, वी हैव कवर्ड इन ज्योग्राफी. What are earthquakes? If any of you remember the definition, what do you mean by earthquake? Definition तो मैंने लिखवाया था हमारा बैच में. बताइए, what do you mean by earthquake? How do you define earthquake? Please tell me. So what is earthquake? Sudden movement on the surface of earth due to release of energy. ठीक है. Movement of earth crust due to seismic activities. So it's not entirely the earth crust, it does not move as such. So it's because earth crust is attached to the upper part of the upper mantle. So basically it is the lithosphere which moves, not the crust itself. Sudden shaking of the earth due to endogenetic forces. ठीक है. Movement in the earth surface due to sudden release of energy. ठीक है. Almost. It is basically the vibrations which are felt. है ना? The vibrations which are felt on the earth's surface, we call it as earthquake. The vibrations which are felt on the surface causes a disturbance of transient equilibrium which was existed earlier. Okay, this is the earth's lithosphere. So the entire lithosphere was at an equilibrium. Okay, some kind of static equilibrium was there, and some sudden release of energy into this part causes the vibration of this entire lithosphere. It starts to shake. Remember, it is lithosphere, not crust. Please don't use the word crust, because lithosphere includes crust as well as upper part of the upper mantle, right? Lithosphere includes crust as well as upper part of the upper mantle. Then only it is together, we call it as the plate. This entire lithosphere might start to shake. It might be the entire lithosphere or only the top surface of the earth. ऐसे भी हो सकता है. It entirely depends upon the amount of energy released. Because during the earthquake, some part of the earth feels vibrations and some do not. है ना? That entirely depends upon the factor called focus. Where exactly the focus of the earthquake is there. It might be well deep or very shallow. Okay, wherever it is possible. कहीं पे भी हो सकता है. This is called as a shallow earthquake, this is called as a deep earthquake. And what is epicenter? Epicenter is the point just above. Okay, just above the focus, which is on the surface. The nearest point from the surface to the focus is called as epicenter. Right? I hope ये सारा चीजें तो आपको पता ही होगा. Keep writing. What are the causes? As usual, we have both natural as well as anthropogenic. Natural cause as well as anthropogenic cause. What are the natural causes? Natural causes of earthquake क्या क्या हो सकता है? Most common one, plate movements. सबको पता है plate movements. ये तो मैंने लिख लिया. Most common तो लिख दिया. अभी बताओ, आप लोग बताओ. What are the natural causes of earthquakes other than the plate movements? न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन, ठीक है, वो तो एंथ्रोपोजेनिक हो गया. नेचुरल बताओ. गुड. लैंडस्लाइड. देन लैंडस्लाइड ऑल्सो कॉजेस द वाइब्रेशंस. वॉल्केनिक eruptions. वॉल्केनिक eruptions. और बताइए. सारा सेम ही है. स्लिपिंग ऑफ ओवर फॉल्ट लाइन प्लेट मूवमेंट से सब कुछ आ गया विद अ सिंगल टर्म आई हैव इंक्लूडेड एवरीथिंग गुड नेहा इम्पैक्ट ऑफ मीटियोर इज इट मीटियोर और मीटियोरॉइड और मीटियोराइट इम्पैक्ट कौन सा करेगा विच वन इम्पैक्ट द अर्थ सरफेस इट इज मीटियोराइट okay meteorite is the body which impacts the earth's surface along with that land subsidence when the land suddenly collapses it causes earthquakes ठीक है प्लेट मूवमेंट के बारे में तो सबको पता है what are the different types of plate movements so remember we have three types of earthquakes shallow intermediate deep seated shallow intermediate deep seated shallow earthquakes happens up to 70 kilometers 0 to 70 kilometers shallow earthquake intermediate 70 to 350 okay I'm talking about the focus so beyond 350 to 750 kilometers tak hoga deep seated earthquakes and we have three different types of plate movements kaun sa divergent plate boundary here we have ocean divergence ocean continent divergence in case of divergence the plates move away from each other it is just the movement of plates which move away from each other so it's only the shallow type both ocean as well as continent divergence है ना because whatever the breaking which is happening it is only along the lithosphere because both the plates are moving apart यहां पर है बीच में ridge so magma rises upwards and whatever the changes are happening near to the lithosphere only ये सारा तो हमने बहुत डिटेल डिस्कस किया है right divergent plate boundary only shallow type convergent plate boundary convergent में तीन टाइप है ocean convergence ocean continent convergence and then continent convergence ocean continent ocean convergence में ocean continent convergence में we have all the three types 1 2 3 मतलब shallow intermediate deep यहां पर बस shallow ही होगा in case of continent convergence we have both shallow as well as intermediate but not deep why in case of continent convergence we have only shallow and intermediate type of earthquake but not deep seated earthquake why somebody tell me good because there is no subduction there is no formation of trench here. The third type is transform plate boundary or parallel plate boundary. Here it is just shallow. There is no intermediate, there is no deep. अच्छा ठीक है दो क्यों लिखा मैंने why there is an intermediate earthquake in continent convergence इसका आंसर बताइए why there is an intermediate earthquake in continent convergence whereas divergence में तो बस shallow यहां पर भी shallow है इंटरमीडिएट की तो 70 to 350 किलोमीटर तक चलता है ना इंटरमीडिएट गुड yes Taruna you are right so that's because of partial subduction okay continent convergence involves partial subduction where some part of the one of the continent goes below the another but it will not undergo complete subduction it is because of partial subduction. Is that clear? These are due to the natural factors. Anthropogenic बताइए. What are the anthropogenic causes of earthquakes? Man-made causes of earthquakes. ओके. माइनिंग के वजह से होता है, बिकॉज ड्यू टू द माइनिंग यू डग द अंडरग्राउंड, पूरा खाली कर देते, इट बिकम्स बिट शैलो, इट कॉजेस ए कंटिन्यूअस वाइब्रेशन, दैट इज पॉसिबल. फिर न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन का इंपैक्ट इतना बड़ा होता है, इट कॉजेस अर्थक्वेक ऑल्सो. एंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली RIS. What is RIS? Reservoir induced seismicity. Reservoir induced seismicity. Reservoir induced seismicity is basically a type of earthquake caused by the pressure exerted by the dams and reservoirs. है ना, इसका भी हमने बात किया है. Just to recap, if you are constructing a dam, you should ensure that the water which you are storing है ना, डैम स्टोर्स ए ह्यूज क्वांटिटी ऑफ वाटर. पहले पानी नहीं था, अभी सडनली इतना पानी आ गया एंड इट इज ए ह्यूज कॉलम, है ना. इट विल एक्सर्ट ए लॉट ऑफ प्रेशर ऑन द लैंड बिलो दिस. इसके नीचे जो लैंड है ना, इसके ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा प्रेशर आता है इसके वजह से. If this land is not strong, it is not made up of rocky, ऐसे ज्यादा rock नहीं है, थोड़ा सा sedimentary type है, or it's a kind of plain type, it causes a huge vibrations in the entire system, which is called as reservoir induced seismicity. Reservoir induced seismicity. Best example हमारा कोयना डैम, महाराष्ट्र. कोयना डैम, ठीक है. दीज आर द मेजर एंथ्रोपोजेनिक फैक्टर्स. कॉजेस हो गया. रीजन्स इन इंडिया which are affected by earthquakes. The regions of India affected by earthquakes. So this map shows the different regions of India which are affected by earthquakes. अगर मेंस में क्वेश्चन आ गया, please write this map and show the different regions. Say earthquake zones, we call them as earthquake zones. Earthquake zones are classified into a total of 5 zones. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4, Zone 5. A total of 5 zones. So depending upon the possible intensity of earthquakes, Zone 5 में there is a higher intensity and higher probability. Okay, there is a higher intensity of earthquake and higher probability. उसका probability more frequency भी ज्यादा होता है. And if even though it is happening, they happen at a higher intensity also. That is what is Zone 5. Zone 5 is the least probability and least intensity. India में there is no Zone 1. There is no Zone 1 in India. मतलब इंडिया में कहीं पे भी कभी भी अर्थक्वेक हो सकता है. It is possible. Fine. India can experience earthquake anywhere at any point of time. So we have zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. Always remember, there are only 4 zones. There is no zone 1 in India. Okay, let me just zoom in and show you. ऐसे करते हैं, इसके ऊपर कलरिंग कर देता हूं तो आपको समझ आ जाएगा. So let's mark zone 5 regions in India. Zone 5, let's mark it in red color. खतरा है. So what are the regions in India which are having the probability of highest earthquake? Highest probability कहां पर है? Okay, zone 5 is highest probability, highest intensity and as well as highest frequency. Okay, intensity and frequency लिखो. Intensity is अगर हो गया तो कितना impact होगा, frequency is how frequently देखकर. zone 5 ज्यादा है, zone 1 बहुत कम है. इंडिया में zone 1 नहीं है, right? What are the regions? The entire northeast, and parts of Great Himalayas and the surrounding, not always Great Himalayas. Okay, surroundings. Example, Kashmir Valley, Dharamshala, surrounding Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh, surrounding Nanda Devi in Uttarakhand, and then the Kutch of Gujarat. So जहां पर है हमारा Bhuj experienced one of the most destructive earthquakes in 2001. Also the Nepal border of Bihar. कौन सा? Northeast, the Kashmir Valley, surrounding Dharamshala, surrounding Nanda Devi, Nepal border of Bihar, and then Kutch region of Rajasthan. ये हो गया zone 5. Zone 4 मार्क कर लो. Zone 4. Can you see the entire Himalayas, rest of the entire Himalayas? Let me use a different color. एक तो the rest of entire Himalayas come under zone 4 other than zone 5. Zone 5 छोड़ के बाकी सारा zone 4 है. Other than zone 5, the entire Himalayas, and then the most of northern Indian plains, the Ganga plain, including Delhi. Ganga plain including Delhi. है ना, ये जो दिल्ली रीजन है एंड द लोअर पार्ट्स ऑफ पंजाब, सॉरी लोअर पार्ट्स ऑफ हिमालयाज इन पंजाब हरियाणा एंड द एंटायर यूपी बिहार, ये जो टुवर्ड्स हिमालयाज जाते जाते, क्योंकि दिस इज वेयर द कोलिजन इज हैपनिंग है ना, सो दैट इज वेयर द इंपैक्ट विल बी मोर. As you move more towards the Himalayas, impact will be more. Okay, the entire Ganga plain, zone 4, and surrounding the Kutch in Gujarat, western parts of Maharashtra near Latur. There is a fault over there. Western parts of Maharashtra near Latur, and also the Sundarban Delta of West Bengal. These are all zone 4. ठीक है, zone 5, zone 4 easy है. Zone 5 के surrounding में we have zone 4 everywhere except the Western Maharashtra and the Sundarbans Delta which is bit separate. बाकी सारा zone 5 के सराउंडिंग में ही है. हाँ, zone 5 में हमने एक मेजर चीजें छोड़ दिया, यही गलती करते थे. अंडमान निकोबार, इट इज टोटली zone 5. वी हैव वॉल्केनो ओवर देयर. अर्थक्वेक क्यों नहीं होगा? इट इज zone 5. अभी मार्क करते हैं zone 2, मोस्ट स्टेबल. तो बाकी जो भी बचेगा वो zone 3 हो जाएगा. मोस्ट स्टेबल कौन सा है? द नॉर्थन मध्य प्रदेश एंड देन राजस्थान. नॉर्दर्न मध्य प्रदेश एंड राजस्थान, मोस्ट ऑफ द राजस्थान, क्योंकि ये तो पूरा स्टेबल है ना, इट इज टोटली स्टेबल. सुंदरबंस ऑफ वेस्ट बंगाल zone 4. And then most of Karnataka, Rayalaseema, Telangana, and then Vidarbha. That is the core of Deccan Plateau. This is the core of Deccan Plateau, है ना? Vidarbha region of Maharashtra, Rayalaseema, Telangana, and then Karnataka except Western Ghats. फिर यहां पर है छत्तीसगढ़ ओडिशा बेल्ट एंड देन झारखंड ओडिशा बेल्ट. छत्तीसगढ़ ओडिशा, झारखंड ओडिशा, देन लोअर तमिलनाडु, लोअर तमिलनाडु. दिस इज zone 2. तो बाकी zone 2, zone 4 के अलावा जो भी बीच में है दैट इज व्हाट इज zone 3. यू डोंट हैव टू मार्क इट सेपरेटली. रेस्ट इट इज zone 3. सो यहां पर आपको अगर मैप लिख रहे हो, मेक ए इंडेक्स हियर. ओके, 4 डिफरेंट बॉक्स. सबसे रेड होगा zone 5, ब्लू होगा zone 4, व्हाइट होगा zone 2. दिस इज zone 2, this is zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. So technically there is no part of India is safer as such, but comparatively from the northern part, southern parts are more safer. ना, यहां पर usually the frequency of earthquake is lesser. Is that clear? Lakshadweep is zone 3. Lakshadweep is zone 3. क्योंकि वहां पर देयर इज नो ट्रेंच और सबडक्शन. Zone 4 is surrounding of Zone 5 in Kutch. Okay, along the border between Gujarat and Rajasthan. The border of Gujarat and Rajasthan, surrounding of Kutch. That's a good question, Harshit. Harshit is asking, यहाँ पर तो ठीक है, we can understand, नॉर्थन में तो है, but what about here? Why do we have zone 5 in Kutch? What is the reason behind this? So that's because there is a fault line here. An intraplate crack is there here. Okay, यहाँ पर है a crack in the plate. That is Allhaband fault. Allhaband fault. Okay, you can search for it if you are interested. You can look for it. Allhaband fault. There is a huge fault line over there. Okay, these are the local faults. जैसे यहाँ पर लातूर में है, okay, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में भी there is also a fault line. ऐसे बहुत सारा fault lines है, which can cause earthquake at any point of time, and they are huge. Okay, they are intraplate faults. Intraplate cracks. प्लेट के अंदर ही जो क्रैक्स होता है ना, they are the ones. Next, earthquake management. So as per NDMA guidelines, there are 6 pillars of earthquake management. We need to use these 6 pillars to manage earthquake in India. Fine. So what are the 6 pillars? The first one, building earthquake resistant new constructions. Earthquake resistance new construction. So how can we build the buildings to be resistant to earthquake? कैसे कर सकते हो? How can we make the buildings resistant to earthquake? Because I told you, during the earthquakes, it is the buildings which are the cause of disaster. अगर building नहीं है तो earthquake will not cause any kind of disaster. बस खाली shake होने से, vibrate होने से कोई मरते नहीं है. People will not die. But it is because the buildings collapse due to the shaking. So NDMA first guideline दिया है, जो भी नया construction होगा, it should involve the earthquake resistant technology. What is earthquake resistant technology? There are various engineering techniques which are involved in constructing the buildings, like the pillars which we use or the concrete slabs which we use for constructing high-rise buildings. They should ensure that whenever there is a shaking of the earth's surface, these structures absorb the vibration. Okay, they should observe the vibration. इसका मतलब क्या है? Whenever there is a shaking, whenever there is a vibration, these buildings should also vibrate. ऐसे strong, stiff नहीं होना चाहिए. Okay, it should not be too strong. Whatever the structures which remain too tight and too strong, है ना, they are the first one to collapse. जो थोड़ा सा वाइब्रेट होके वो जो एनर्जी बिल्डअप हो रहा है ना उसको इजीली रिलीज कर देता है, दे आर द वंस टू बी सेव्ड. दे शुड ऑल्सो शेक ए बिट along with the land. Okay, that is what earthquake resistant structures. Construction of pillars, construction of tunnels, construction of the walls should be done in such a manner that they can absorb the shock, they can absorb the earthquake waves. कोई भी नया कंस्ट्रक्शन के लिए ये कंपलसरी है, इसको कंपलसरी बनाना है. ये तो ऑल ओवर इंडिया इंप्लीमेंट करना तो मुश्किल है, बट इसलिए वी हैव नेशनल बिल्डिंग कोड. नेशनल बिल्डिंग कोड, व्हाट इज दिस नेशनल बिल्डिंग कोड? सो दिस इज अ सेट ऑफ प्रिस्क्राइब्ड स्टैंडर्ड्स फॉर कंस्ट्रक्टिंग बिल्डिंग्स इन इंडिया. ना सेट ऑफ स्टैंडर्ड्स फॉर कंस्ट्रक्टिंग बिल्डिंग्स इन इंडिया. So they are codified and the government has made it compulsory that everyone should follow this. Code तो है, implementation में मुश्किल है. There is a difficulty in implementation of this code. Why can't we use wood? दो reason. Earthquake in India is not predictable. कहीं पे भी हो सकता है. इट माइट टेक ईयर्स टुगेदर, ईयर्स बिफोर वी कैन सी द नेक्स्ट अर्थक्वेक. इतना ज्यादा फ्रीक्वेंट नहीं है, जितना जापान में है उतना ज्यादा फ्रीक्वेंट तो इंडिया में नहीं है. सेकेंड, बिकॉज ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन, वी नीड मल्टीपल स्टोरीज. यू कैन नॉट हैव दैट इन वुडन बिल्डिंग्स. राइट? So the first pillar, please write this: earthquake resistant new structure. Building earthquake resistant new structures. कि वहां पर एक लाइन लिखो, ऑल न्यू कंस्ट्रक्शन all new constructions to be done with earthquake resistant building code. All new constructions to be done with earthquake resistant building code. ये तो नया बिल्डिंग्स बन रहे हैं उसके लिए. What about those buildings which are already existing? उसके लिए सेकेंड पिलर, the selective retrofitting, selective seismic strengthening and retrofitting. Seismic strengthening का मतलब क्या है? जो ऑलरेडी है उसको स्ट्रेंथन बनाए. इफ यू वांट टू ऐड एक्स्ट्रा पिलर यू ऐड, यू वांट टू ऐड एक्स्ट्रा वॉल, एक्स्ट्रा बीम, जो करना है करो. जो ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग स्ट्रक्चर है उसको अर्थक्वेक रेजिस्टेंस बनाओ. दैट इज व्हाट इज रेट्रोफिटिंग. मतलब जो बन गया है उसको ठीक करना, फिटिंग करना. सेलेक्टिव सिस्मिक स्ट्रेंथनिंग एंड रेट्रोफिटिंग ऑफ एग्जिस्टिंग स्ट्रक्चर. इसमें सारा बिल्डिंग्स के तो नहीं कर सकते, वी कैन नॉट डू इट फॉर एवरी बिल्डिंग. सो वी नीड टू गिव प्रियोरिटी टू सर्टेन बिल्डिंग्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसेस, schools and colleges, hospitals, heritage buildings, dams and reservoirs, जिनके लिए जरूरी है, which are under the threat of collapse due to earthquake, उसको ठीक कराओ. This is the second pillar. Please write. Second one is selective seismic strengthening selective seismic strengthening and retrofitting of existing structure, and retrofitting of existing structure. Full stop. It involves strengthening of heritage buildings, buildings of national importance, public utility structures, dams and reservoirs. Third one is regulation and enforcement. This is the important one, क्योंकि खाली कोड बनाने से, रूल बनाने से कोई फॉलो नहीं करता है. You should ensure that there is a mechanism for enforcement and implementation. जो भी नेशनल बिल्डिंग कोड बनाया, जो भी रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन सेफ्टी कोड बनाया, that has to be implemented by whom? Implemented by the state governments. Okay, because they are the respective enforcement officers in this particular field. Buildings में, construction में, PWD works में, they are the ones who is in charge of it. Third one, regulation and enforcement of safety standards and building code by the state government. Fourth one, awareness and preparedness. ये सारा तो कर लिया, but even the people should be informed, people should be made ready. उनको पता होना चाहिए यहाँ पर अर्थक्वेक होने वाले. ओके, अर्थक्वेक हो गया तो क्या करना है, कैसे उससे बचना है, कैसे हमें प्रोटेक्शन लेना है, ये सारा चीजें. You might have seen this, okay, in big advertisement boards, TV ads, newspaper ads, है ना, radio channels में. You might have seen these. That is what is awareness and preparedness. Awareness and preparedness, it involves preparation of handbook on safety, video films, and vulnerability assessment. हाँ, हमारा जो जापान में होता है ना मॉक ड्रिल्स, इंडिया में भी होता है, बहुत कम होता है. जापान में तो इट इज कंपलसरी, है ना, हर स्कूल में, हर कॉलेज में, हर गवर्नमेंट ऑफिस में such regular mock drills are compulsory. So that is awareness and preparedness. So this is for the general public. For the entire organization and the entire community, we need capacity development. Okay, the organization which is handling this, the organization which is responsible for maintenance, mitigation के लिए, as well as the community. What is community in the context of disaster management? Community is the affected people as a whole. They need capacity development. All these measures of mitigation, okay, it requires a regular training, education and research and development. Regular training, education and research and development on the methods to be followed to manage earthquake, है ना, that is what is capacity development. And finally, emergency response. Emergency response is basically what to do in case of earthquake. Earthquake हुआ तो क्या करना है? It is always the community who are the first responders. The people who are impacted first, they should come forward. You cannot wait for the government to come. Okay, if there is earthquake, we should help each other. Then only we can survive. Maximum survival chances तब होता है, ऐसा नहीं है कि हम खुद भाग जाएंगे. सबको लेके जाओ साथ में. So that is how even they will come to your help. It is the community as a whole which can sustain any kind of disaster. Okay, that is emergency response. Sixth one, emergency response. It should be by the local authority. It should be by the local authority and the affected community. Capacity development का लिखो. Capacity development involves education, training and research and development. Education, training and research and development, that is capacity development. Emergency response में it should be by the local community and local authority and the affected community. So those are the 6 NDMA guidelines. Please try to remember at least their heading. Heading याद रखना जरूरी है. So once you remember, you can write it by your own. जो भी उसका description मैंने दिया है ना, so you can write it by your own. Please remember the heading at least. What are the 6 pillars of earthquake management in India? Now, what are the challenges in implementing earthquake management? ये जो भी हमने डिस्कस किया था उसको इंप्लीमेंट करने में क्या क्या दिक्कत है. The most important challenge is implementation of National Building Code NBC. NBC कोड तो कोड ही रह गया तो, but most of the people do not give importance to the safety. Rather, they would want to have a very aesthetic building. You might have seen the new constructions, glass staircase, ऐसे राउंड राउंड घूम घूम के. कोई अर्थक्वेक हो गया तो पता चलता है जितना जल्दी उससे निकल सकता है. एंड ये सारा ग्लास वास से तो कोई रुकेगा नहीं. इट विल बी द फर्स्ट वन टू ब्रेक. एंड इज नॉट ओनली द पीपल, इवन द इंजीनियर्स हु कंस्ट्रक्ट. पहले बात है देयर वुड बी मेनी आर्किटेक्ट्स हु रियली वांट टू फॉलो द रूल्स, बट द वन हु इज गेटिंग इट कंस्ट्रक्टेड है ना, वो बोलते हैं नहीं नहीं हमें तो नहीं चाहिए. उनका तो चॉइस ही नहीं है. इफ ही डिनाइज ही विल गेट द जॉब डन फ्रॉम अनदर पर्सन, है ना. करना ही चाहिए. The challenges: inadequate implementation of NBC. First one, inadequate implementation of NBC. Second one, absence of earthquake resistant structure. Earthquake resistant structure. कोई भी ज्यादा बनाते नहीं है. Most importantly, there is no system of licensing of engineers in India. There is no system of licensing of engineers in India. They will take all they ask is certificate. है ना. हमने तो बहुत सारा 3 Idiots का केस देख लिया है. इंजीनियरिंग और कोई करता है, सर्टिफिकेट को और किसी को ही मिलता है. There is no system. You can write the second one, third one. Absence of system of licensing of engineers. System of licensing of engineer. And people who are there in the construction sector, है ना, they are usually not trained. lack of skills. Who comes to construction sector? जिसके लिए और कहीं पे भी काम नहीं मिला, where he did not get any work anywhere else, he will come to the construction sector. And do you expect them to do all the structures, everything as per the new demands, the demands of the changing society? नहीं. Okay, lack of formal training in construction sector. Most importantly, lack of adequate preparedness and timely response. Lack of adequate preparedness and timely response. So बहुत लोगों को पता ही नहीं है ऐसे अर्थक्वेक हो सकता है, हुआ तो क्या करना है क्या नहीं करना है. In this context, if you have to write conclusion, you can add some of the initiatives which are taken by the government. Initiatives, पहले initiatives तो पता है, NBC, National Building Code, which prescribes a set of rules and regulations for new constructions. Other than that, we have National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Project. National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Project. So what is this National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Project? It is a central sector's project being implemented by NDMA. As the name itself says, this is a mitigation. Mitigation is pre-disaster. है ना, हमने डिस्कस किया था ना, मिटिगेशन फंड गवर्नमेंट ने एस्टैब्लिश नहीं किया, बट इंस्टेड I assume that you guys are writing, तो इसलिए I don't give much focus to what I write on the board, just to point out myself, इसलिए लिखता हूँ ऐसे. Otherwise I would have written it down. I thought you guys are writing it. Absence of system of licensing. Okay, this is system of licensing. कभी कभी इसमें लिखना में थोड़ा सा दिक्कत है. सिस्टम ऑफ लाइसेंसिंग हो गया, देन फॉर्मल ट्रेनिंग. This is National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Program. National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Program. Okay, it is a centrally sponsored scheme implemented by NDMA. It is sponsored by the centrally sponsored scheme. मतलब पूरा पैसा सेंटर देगा. Who will implement this? NDMA. This is basically for the pre-disaster. Pre-disaster के लिए we have program to reduce the risk, structural measure, non-structural measures, prevention, ये सारे चीजें के लिए we have this National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Program. ओके, गवर्नमेंट ने बोला था ना मिटिगेशन के लिए अलग सा प्रोजेक्ट से हमें उसके लिए अलग सा फंड नहीं एस्टैब्लिश नहीं करना है, तो दिस इज वन सच एग्जांपल. सो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट अर्थक्वेक. बताइए एनी डाउट्स रिगार्डिंग अर्थक्वेक्स? सो जो भी क्वेश्चन आएगा इसके अंदर ही आना चाहिए. इन द कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ डिजास्टर्स, व्हाट आर द थिंग्स वी डिस्कस्ड? वी डिस्कस्ड व्हाट इज अर्थक्वेक, What are the causes of earthquakes? है ना, earthquake का मतलब क्या है? What is cause? What are the regions in India affected by earthquake? And the NDMA guidelines. What are the challenges and what are the initiatives? हाँ ब्रेक दे देंगे, अभी ब्रेक देंगे. तुषार हैज अ डाउट, मूवमेंट ऑफ इंडियन प्लेट, इज इट द रीजन फॉर नो जोन 1? यस, इंडियन प्लेट इज अंडर कांस्टेंट मूवमेंट है ना, तो पूरा सेफ बोलना तो मुश्किल है. व्हाट आर द बेसिक रीजंस फॉर साउथ इंडिया एंड डेक्कन अर्थक्वेक्स? इंट्रा प्लेट. See, even though there are lesser chances of earthquakes over there, there can be possibility of intra plate. Within the plate there can be shake, there can be certain fault line हो सकता है. Fine, let's take a short break, 10 minutes of break, and then we'll continue with floods. Okay, next one would be floods. So till then, if you want, you can also see what are the important things which you have to take care during the earthquake. Earthquake हो गया तो क्या क्या करना है, ऐसे simple instructions है. So you don't have to write it in the answer. Answer में तो directly नहीं आने वाला है ऐसे वाला. So just general instructions. Okay, then we'll continue with the floods. Check. So the next topic is floods. What do you mean by flood? So what is the meaning of flood? Can somebody define a flood? बताइए, anyone? Can somebody define flood? Flooding का मतलब क्या है? When do we say something is flooded? Inundation by water, good. Overflow of water, especially river or lake. Excess flow of water. Overflowing of water. Rise of water level beyond the river banks. That is a good definition. Pradyumna Gupta. Sudden movement of water where it is not supposed to be. That is also a good definition. Harshita. So do you think in this situation there is a probability of flood? दिख रहा है? ऐसा लग रहा है यहाँ पर ड्रॉट है rather than flood. Right? ऐसा लग रहा है पूरा ड्राई हो गया. And trust me, in this land only there would be more flooding. The possibility of flooding is more here. क्यों? Can you see the way the water is Moving. What all can you observe here? Can you see the land is very flat? The land is very very flat. That's why the river is meandering. है ना, ऐसे meander होके जा रहा है. Second one is the depth of the water channel is also shallow. Water channel is very shallow here, and there are not much of bunds on both the sides. Most importantly, there is not much of vegetation. All these reasons together are responsible for the flooding. क्यों flooding होता है? Where the river flows in a very shallow water bank, there its water channel is very shallow, मतलब ज्यादा depth नहीं है, and the river is flowing in a very plain area, बहुत plain region है, where it can change the channel very easily. The meandering channel है ना, it can change very easily. तो अभी ऐसे चल रहा था तो कभी ऐसे हो गया तो फिर ऐसे होने लगा. ओके, हर जगह में फ्लड हो सकता है. It can cause flooding anytime, and there are no bunds to prevent the overflow of water. You can easily undergo flooding. This is the normal flow. What will happen during the monsoon? The peak flow, where the water overflows, you can see it can easily overflow for a very long distance. The land is totally plain next to the river, इसलिए बहुत easily flood हो सकता है. So such regions are more prone to flooding. So what is a flood plain? Flooding क्या है? What do you mean by flooding? Flooding basically means sudden and temporary inundation. Inundation means coming under the water. When a land suddenly comes under the water, and it comes under the water for a temporary period. It's not like all through the year the water is there. That is not flooding. When any part of the land comes under the water suddenly and for a temporary period, we call it as flooding. Fine. The sudden, you can write the definition, the sudden and temporary inundation is called as flooding. Sudden and temporary inundation is called as flooding. What are the causes of flooding? फिर यहाँ पर अप्लाई करो same logic. Usually a disaster will have both natural as well as anthropogenic. What are the natural causes of flooding? Naturally कैसे हो सकते हैं बताओ? What are the natural causes of flooding? Why will there be flooding here? क्यों हो सकता है? Very heavy precipitation, बहुत ज्यादा पानी आ गया. We call it as cloud burst. Sudden bursting of clouds causing heavy precipitation. We call it as cloud burst. इसके बारे में बात करेंगे अलग से. Cloud burst, then heavy precipitation हो गया, excessive rainfall, cloud burst, melting of glacier. Glacier तो हमेशा melt होता है. Glaciers continuously melt. Summers में melt होना ही है उसका, winters में refreeze होना है. That is what is glacier. So how come glacier melt will form flood? The faster rate of melting of glacier, है ना, and it is debatable whether it is natural or anthropogenic. Let's put it on hold. Then earthquake. Earthquake causes flooding. How earthquake causes flooding? Whenever there is a river channel is there and there is a huge shaking of the river channel, it changes the entire river course itself. Whenever there is a large earthquake is happening in a plain area, जैसे कि बिहार, okay, we have large number of streams come from the Himalayas, कोसी, सप्त कोसी आता है वहां पर, and if at all there is a strong earthquake in those regions which are already prone to floods, earthquake can easily trigger a flooding over there. It can change the course of the river very easily. Earthquake हो सकता है. Changing or shifting of river channel. Okay, shifting of river channel. That is also a natural phenomena. Okay, best example why flooding happens every year in Bihar and West Bengal. Bihar में तो if you have seen the topography of Bihar, let me just show you. बिहार का टोपोग्राफी देखा है आपने? See here, this is Bihar, and Bihar is actually along the region, Tarai region of Himalayas, and this entire part of Bihar, can you see? This is Nepal Bihar border. Can you see how many number of streams are entering? A large number of streams are continuously entering from the Himalayas into the Bihar plains. Right, and this is these high volume, large quantity of water is just entering the plains. Can you see? This is how the Himalayas are there. Suddenly they are entering the plains. This is Saptkosi, and suddenly a huge quantity of sediments, debris along with the rivers are deposited, and when they suddenly enter from the great Himalayas into the plains, their speed suddenly stops. When they suddenly stops, the huge quantity of load which they were carrying, उसको आगे लेके जाने का उसके पास energy नहीं रहता है, because the river is flowing in a plain. In a plain region, slope is less. The river cannot take forward that load, so that entire sediments are deposited here, and in that case a huge sediments get accumulated, and that will change the river channel very frequently. बहुत frequently उसको shift कर देगा, बहुत frequently इसको change कर देता. So that is why Kosi is called a sorrow of Bihar. Why? A large quantity of water and the sediments are deposited here. It shifts the river course very easily. Can you see? There is no single course at all. कहीं ऐसे, कहीं ऐसे, कहीं ऐसे, ऐसे, ऐसे बहुत easily shift हो जाता है. That is what is Kosi. Okay, not only Kosi, there are many such rivers. Can you see? This entire part of Bihar receives a huge quantity of sedimentation as well as the river waters, and all of them flood this northern part. Very easy to shift the river course here. Right? Shifting of river channel. फिर siltation. when there is excessive siltation, suppose if this is the river channel, the siltation can make the river channel shallow. Continuous deposition of silt will make the river channel shallow. So जो normally पानी का depth यहां तक रहता है, now it is almost till here and it can very easily overflow into the surrounding flooding plains because of siltation. Siltation and sediment deposition. Siltation and sediment deposition. Then natural it can also be due to high tides along the coastal regions. High tides along the coastal regions. High tides can cause the inundation. Cyclones can cause the inundation. High tides, cyclones, even tsunami can cause the inundation. Sudden inundation क्यों होता है? Cyclone means the huge quantity of water is pushed towards the coastal region. Glough is another reason. What is glough? इसके पहले भी मैंने बताया था, ग्लेशियर लेक आउटबर्स्ट फ्लड्स. ग्लेशियर लेक आउटबर्स्ट फ्लड. लेट मी शो यू एनी ऑफ द ग्लेशियर लेक्स कैसे दिखता है. ये देखो, दिस इज द बेस्ट एग्जांपल. कैन यू सी ए ग्लेशियर हियर? दिस इज द ग्लेशियर. इससे जो पानी मेल्ट होता है ना, इट कम्स एंड अक्यूमुलेट्स हियर एंड इट फॉर्म्स ए ग्लेशियर. एंड यूजुअली दिस ग्लेशियर्स वुड हैव एट इट्स माउथ ए ब्लॉकेज एंड द ब्लॉकेज आर caused by moraine. Moraines are glacial deposits. It blocks the lakes near to the mouth of glaciers. So now from here the sudden flooding can be caused because of two reasons. One is यहाँ से जो पानी आ रहा है ना, so that will suddenly rise. The melting water should suddenly rise. Why it will melt at faster rate? Because of global warming, climate change. Or maybe this moraine has become weaker and suddenly it collapses. If they are collapsing suddenly and causing the outburst, that is a natural reason. Okay, it is due to the natural cause. There is a disaster here. Glacial lake outburst हो रहा है. But if it is because of the melting of this glacier, it is a man-made thing. How? Because of the pollution, because of the global warming, because of the climate change. How pollution causes melting of glacier? Because of black carbon. Okay, black carbon which is released due to the burning of fossil fuel as well as the burning of stubble. It deposits on the glaciers and it causes faster melting of glaciers. And once this moraine, मतलब इसका capacity तो होना चाहिए, ज्यादा पानी आ गए तो इसको burst होना ही है. It will cause the flooding. Any examples of glacial lake outburst flood? Glough का any examples है? Can somebody tell? So that is a misconception. चमोली में जो हुआ था, that is not glough. Okay, that is because of our TV channel who are over enthusiastic. It took nearly more than 1 month for the scientists to come to conclusion what exactly caused the reason of recent जो चमोली में हुआ था ना 2021 में floods. That is not totally because of GLOF. It is because of landslide. And landslide हुआ था because of some part of the melting. वो अलग बात है. It is not a lake which got outburst. It is the landslide. 2013 में केदारनाथ हुआ था ना, that is because of GLOF. Above Kedarnath, there was a glacial lake, Chorabari Lake. Chorabari Lake. And Chorabari Lake came from Chorabari Glacier. The same glacier which is the origin of Mandakini River. Okay, उसके नीचे था Chorabari Lake. And suddenly the water in this Chorabari Lake suddenly increased because of the cloud burst. वहां पर cloud burst हुआ था, पानी इतना ज्यादा हो गया, it got outburst and the entire Kedarnath valley got flooded. That is 2013 केदारनाथ फ्लड्स. बट 2021 में जो फ्लडिंग हुआ है अभी रिसेंटली, दैट इज नॉट एंटायरली बिकॉज ऑफ ग्लॉफ, इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ लैंडस्लाइड. लैंडस्लाइड के वजह से भी हो सकता है. दैट इज द नेक्स्ट रीजन. प्लीज राइट इट. लैंडस्लाइड कैसे होगा? लेट मी जस्ट शो यू. Okay, this is one of the videos which I got it from the internet. Can you see this part is actually the Nanda Devi glacier and the surrounding region. यहाँ पर ये जो one side of this side of the hill है ना, it collapsed and this collapsed part caused the flooding. Okay, you can see. Can you see that collapsed part? This is what is landslide. Okay, this is majorly landslide, and that happened in Rontigad, which was a tributary of Rishiganga, and it caused a huge flooding in Rishiganga. Rontigad से शुरू हुआ and Rishiganga was the tributary of धौली गंगा ज्वाइन हुआ. वहां पर था हमारा तपोवन प्रोजेक्ट विच वॉज टोटली वॉश्ड अवे एंड ए ह्यूज टनल वॉज बरीड जहां पर लोग फंस गए थे. You see, let me just play again. It is mainly the cascading effect. एक बार शुरू हो गया, the subsequent lower regions में it gets cascaded. The same thing happened in 2013 also. केदारनाथ वैली में शुरू हुआ था, so बाकी जगह में भी बहुत ज्यादा बारिश हो गया था. It got cascaded. Right? तुषार हैज अ डाउट. सो लैंडस्लाइड लिख दिया आप लोगों ने. लैंडस्लाइड यहां पर एग्जांपल लिख सकते हो. 2021 फ्लड्स ऑफ चमोली, उत्तराखंड. सो तुषार हैज अ डाउट, इज ग्लोबल वार्मिंग नेचुरल और एंथ्रोपोजेनिक? As increase in temperature is inevitable, its rate is only increased by global warming. No, it is not inevitable. Who said it is inevitable? See, global warming can happen by both natural as well as man-made factor, I agree. But it is not like it is inevitable. Not necessarily. Why are you saying it is inevitable? It is us who are responsible for the increase in the temperature due to the increased emission of greenhouse gases. And due to the increased emission of greenhouse gases, and that is causing the increased greenhouse effect, and that is what we call it as global warming. है ना, this is anthropogenic derived only. IPCC भी यही बोल रहा है ना. Anthropogenic factors. What are the anthropogenic factors which causes flooding? Mismanagement of dams and reservoirs. Mismanagement of dams and reservoirs. See, if the water of dams and reservoirs are not managed properly, if we release the waters untimely, or if they are not maintained properly, it might collapse. And if they are not maintained properly, it might collapse, causing the flooding. Mismanagement of dams and reservoirs. Then disturbance of natural drainage system. Disturbance of natural drainage system. For example, turning the rivers, deviation of rivers, obstructing the path of natural course. एक जगह से deviate करो, दूसरी जगह में तो flooding होना ही है. It is the natural reason, natural tendency है. And most importantly, the obstruction of natural drainage system in the hilly regions. In hilly regions, in the name of construction of dams, reservoirs, as well as roads, जो नेचुरल छोटा छोटा स्ट्रीम है ना, उसको हम रुकवा देते, चेंज करवा देते, and gradually this water builds up, they change the direction, comes in a different way, causes flooding. Most importantly, floodplain occupation. Occupation of floodplain. Can you see the floodplain, how wide it is? ऐसे गलती से मिलता है खाली जगह. इंडिया में देखो कोई भी फ्लडप्लेन ऐसे खाली नहीं छोड़ता है. People will occupy till right up to the river bank. There is a name, floodplain. Why it is called as floodplain? There is no common sense. People don't think about that. Because this is a plain which is under flooding at least for some time. कभी ना कभी वो flooding होना ही है. That is why it is called as floodplain. And the plain, entire plain itself is formed by the continuous flooding होके बना है. Just because there are no flooding in the last few years, it doesn't mean that it will not undergo flooding. A floodplain can undergo flooding at least once in 100 year. 100 year में at least एक बार तो होगा ही. Then you can imagine what is the extent of floodplain. And because of the higher population density, urbanization, the expansion of urban region, ये सारे रीजन के वजह से हम तो expand करके river bank तक आ गया. And it is not the river's mistake. If the people are flooded, if the places are flooded, it is our mistake. It should be avoided, right? And most importantly, deforestation. Soil erosion. Deforestation, soil erosion से कैसे होता है? The river runoff increases. The water which is flowing on the surface increases. Wherever you cut down the trees, the surface runoff increases, causes more floods. Soil erosion के वजह से more siltation will happen. Okay, there would be lesser seepage of water, lesser underground water होगा, surface के ऊपर ज्यादा होगा, that causes flooding. Sand mining, that's a very good example. Sand mining. Sand mining से कैसे flooding होता है? So it is expected that on both the sides of the river a sufficient place is left okay, which acts as a plane for absorbing this extra water. You remove all the sand over there, this extra water will not be absorbed, there will be more surface runoff. Sand mining is very bad इसलिए, है ना, इसलिए sand mining usually they avoid, है ना, we should avoid sand mining along the river bank because there are many reasons. एक तो water purification होता है, उसके वजह से the fresh water will get augmented, underground water ज़्यादा हो जाता है. It also reduces flooding. Okay, it helps in seeping of this excess water. You remove the sand, it is bare soil, the water easily flows off, it runs off. न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन यहां पर मत लिखो. न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन तो अर्थक्वेक हो सकता है. फ्लडिंग अगर न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन कोई रिवर के पास में किया तो तभी होगा. Is that clear? What are the flood prone regions of India? The flood prone regions of India. The major flood prone regions of India, you can see UP, Bihar, West Bengal. बिहार का कैन यू सी नॉर्थन पोर्शन ऑफ बिहार टोटली मैंने दिखाया था टोपोग्राफी व्हाई इट इज सो. एज वेल एज पंजाब, हरियाणा, इंडस का ट्रिब्यूटरी है. देन द एंटायर असम बिकॉज ऑफ ब्रह्मपुत्रा, शिफ्टिंग ऑफ ब्रह्मपुत्रा कोर्स. लोअर असम, बराक रिवर. महानदी डेल्टा, केजी डेल्टा. कावेरी में तो ज्यादा नहीं है क्योंकि वहां पानी का बहुत कमी है. गुजरात में पर्टिकुलरली दिस पार्ट, ओके, माही, साबरमती, नर्मदा, तापी, ओनली इन द लोअर पार्ट, नॉट इन द अपर पार्ट्स. These are the flood prone regions of India. Total of 12% of India's land is prone to flood. Total of 12% of India's land is prone to flooding. ठीक है. And along with that we have the coastal plains which are prone to flooding due to cyclone and storm surge. Okay, particularly our eastern coast more prone to cyclones, right? Okay, please mark this region and try to remember. map लिखने का भूलना नहीं. अगर क्वेश्चन आया about the flood, the disaster of flood and the management, please write the map and show the regions affected by flood in India. Flood management as per NDMA guidelines. Of course we are going to discuss under NDMA. जनरली भी डिस्कस कर सकते हैं बट NDMA का डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन आता है ना तो वही डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. इन्वेस्ट इन गुजरात, नर्मदा, तापी, माही, साबरमती. द रिवर्स ऑफ नर्मदा, तापी, माही, साबरमती इन द लोअर पार्ट्स ऑफ गुजरात. As per NDMA guidelines, the flood management measures, management मतलब total overall management क्या क्या करना चाहिए flood control करने के लिए, we can classify into structural and non-structural measures. Structural and non-structural measures. Okay, PPT, I'm not sure if this is shared with you guys already. If it is not shared, at the end of the class share करवा देते हैं. Okay, last class के बाद में करवा देते पूरा एक ही. What are the structural measures? One of the very important structural measure is construction of dams and reservoirs. ये तो गलत हो गया, हमने तो यहां पर डिस्कस किया था ना, एज ए कॉज डैम्स एंड रिजर्वायर्स. तो हाउ कैन वी यूज द सेम डैम्स एंड रिजर्वायर टू कंट्रोल द फ्लडिंग? रिमेंबर, डैम्स एंड रिजर्वायर्स दे आर एक्चुअली प्लान टू कंट्रोल फ्लडिंग. बेस्ट एग्जांपल है हमारा दामोदर रिवर. के दामोदर रिवर वाज वंस अपॉन ए टाइम इट वाज कॉल्ड एज द सॉरो ऑफ बंगाल. दामोदर इज द ट्रिब्यूटरी ऑफ हुगली. ओके, वेस्ट बंगाल में आता है. इट वाज कॉल्ड एज द सॉरो ऑफ बंगाल. And through Damodar Valley Corporation, we constructed multiple dams. What is the purpose? To stop the water and store and release it in a controlled manner, so that we can control the excess overflow of water. जब suddenly बारिश आ जाएगा, we can store it, we can hold it using these dams. Okay, there are a series of 4 dams in DVC. So that is how you can use dams and reservoirs to control and store the water. Okay, that is one of the important methods of structural methods of controlling the floods. But उसको mismanage करो, you don't release the water on time. Okay, Hirakud also best example. Mahanadi was the sort of Odisha है ना, तो Hirakud से वो control हुआ है. If you don't manage it, if you don't manage properly, regular, timely release of water regulation नहीं हुआ, तो तब it causes flooding. Okay, first one you can write structural measures में first one, construction of dams and reservoirs and storage areas. Then levee or flood wall construction. Levee or flood wall construction. What is a levee or flood wall? If this is the river channel and this is the flood plain, okay, this is the natural flood plain. On both the sides of the river channel, sometimes naturally such kind of bunds are formed. Naturally भी form हो सकता है, उसको बोलते हैं levee. Okay, if it is not formed naturally, तो artificially थोड़ा सा elevated bunds बना दो. Okay, they are called as levee or flood wall, so that even if the water rises in the river channel, it will not overflow. Overflow नहीं होगा. That is construction of levee or flood wall. Regular desilting or dredging. Regular desilting or dredging. Dredging is basically the method of removal of the sediments. Okay, because of the sediments which usually continuously get deposited along the base है ना, that makes the river shallow. जितना ज्यादा sediment deposit होगा उतना ज्यादा shallow होगा, उतना ज्यादा overflow रहेगा. We need to continuously removing and dredging. Okay, that is another structural measure. Desilting and dredging. Reforestation and afforestation. Reforestation and afforestation. If you increase the green cover, that will reduce the surface runoff. More water is seepage, मतलब वो बहुत ज्यादा seepage होके अंडरग्राउंड में चला जाता है, so because of which surface water will be reduced. Reforestation and afforestation in the catchment area. In the catchment area, जहां पर पानी कलेक्ट होता है ना, तो वहीं पे पानी का सरफेस रन ऑफ कम कर दो. Then drainage improvement. ड्रेनेज इंप्रूवमेंट. ड्रेनेज इंप्रूवमेंट मतलब जो नेचुरल चैनल्स जो भी सारा ब्लॉकेज हुआ है ना, छोटा मोटा स्ट्रीम्स, छोटा मोटा रिवर्स, सो सबको खोल दो, सो लेट इट फ्लो नेचुरली. Even if you are blocking for the construction of road purpose, you should ensure there should be sufficient passage. You should ensure that they don't get accumulated. Improvement of natural drainage channels. Diversion of flood waters. अगर flood आ भी गया, you should ensure that there is sufficient mechanism to divert the flood waters along the natural canals. Usually a river system is associated with natural canals. अगल बगल में होता है. We should ensure that these are kept free and ready if there is any kind of flooding. तो urbanization में तो नहीं होता है. Will occupy each and every inch of land. What are the non-structural measures? The first important non-structural measure is floodplain zoning. Floodplain zoning. What is floodplain zoning? This is floodplain zoning. Floodplain zoning. See, floodplain zoning involves the classification of land use. Classification of land use and restricting the land use according to the zones. We will divide the land away from the water, away from the river channel. Okay, we will divide and segregate into multiple categories. And we will restrict the land use category, land use in these particular region. For example, the first region which you can see here. The first region is the area which is just next to the river channel. This is the area which should be totally avoided. पूरा avoid करना है हमें. No human activity will be there because this is the most prone region. साल में एक बार तो होगा. Immediately after that there would be some area we can use temporarily for grazing. क्योंकि grazing में क्या होता है, there would be people to look after the animals and they will just graze it and take it back. It's not like 24 hours. After that we can use it for playing field because it is also used for only a short duration. Then after that थोड़ा सा higher elevation में you can use it for car parking and road which can be regularly used. And after that it is industries and सबसे highest level में होना चाहिए housing which is the farthest from the river channel. हमारा गंगा प्लेन में कैसे उल्टा है, just next to the river channel they make homes. This classification and zoning is called as floodplain zoning. This is a non-structural measure. Why it is a non-structural measure? Because it is about the planning and the policy making and implementation. It might involve some of the aspect of physical construction, but still it is majorly about planning and regulation. That is why it is non-structural measure. The first one you can write floodplain zoning. It involves the regulation of land use. It involves the regulation of land use in floodplains. In floodplains and zonation of different areas. And zonation of different areas based on the probability of flooding. based on the probability of flooding. Okay, please write this diagram. ये आप आंसर में लिख सकते हो. The classification of the land use based on the probability of flooding. The different land use कैसे होना चाहिए. That is floodplain zoning. Another important measure is flood proofing. What is flood proofing? Floodplain zoning तो कर दिया, but there would be certain buildings, certain regions which is difficult to shift. Totally shift करना तो मुश्किल है ना, तो वहां पर फ्लड प्रूफिंग करवा दो. इट इज बोथ स्ट्रक्चरल एंड नॉन स्ट्रक्चरल मेजर, दोनों का मिक्स है. Okay, for example, constructing in an elevated platform, okay, constructing multi stories so that नीचे flooding हो गया तो ऊपर तो रह सकता है ऐसे. Okay, that is flood proofing. अगर हो भी गया flood हो भी गया तो कैसे escape करना पहले प्लान करके रखो. That is flood proofing. You can write about this flood proofing. It involves the combination of structural and non-structural measures. It involves the combination of structural and non-structural measures such as raising the level of buildings, double story constructions, etc. Next one, integrated watershed management. Integrated watershed management. What is integrated watershed management? Watershed management is a method of dealing with both floods and droughts. दोनों के लिए it is a very beneficial method. Okay, first, what is a watershed? Watershed का मतलब क्या है? Watershed is that particular area where the entire water is collecting and flowing into a single river channel. Okay, suppose this is the area of West Delhi. West Delhi में there is one single channel where there is multiple tributaries, सारा मिला के आके एक चैनल में ज्वाइन होके होता है. So this entire region is called as one watershed. Okay, this is basically a planning area. You can apply this to the entire state of UP. पूरा entire state of UP के लिए बनाओ. This Ganga river, multiple rivers and tributaries are joining together and flowing, so you can make it as one big watershed, right? So watershed is basically one unit of land where the entire water is accumulating. The idea of watershed management involves managing this entire land holistically, both on the surface as well as below the surface. Okay, the idea is to make this land, entire land, richer in water. पानी यहाँ पर availability ज़्यादा होना चाहिए, both above the surface as well as below the surface. If you want both above the surface and below the surface, you need a good patch of trees, forest होना चाहिए, soil erosion कम करना चाहिए. There should be a sustainable extraction of groundwater, sustainable agriculture होना चाहिए. Whatever you do, you treat this entire unit of land as a single unit and try to manage it. That is what is integrated watershed development program. Through this you can control flood as well as drought. Drought भी कम होगा, flood भी कम होगा. Flood कैसे कम होगा? The surface runoff will reduce, underground runoff will start, the water seepage will start, underground water level will increase. Because of the same reason, floods reduces as well as drought will also be reduced. Surface water कम हो गया तो underground water तो है, it keeps the entire region sustainable. Okay, that is what is integrated watershed development program or integrated watershed management. Along with that, we also want flood forecasting and warning. Flood forecasting and warning. What do you mean by flood forecasting? We should have the system of warning the people who are living in the downstream. Okay, कोई suddenly वहां से पानी छोड़ दिया, okay, पानी इतना ज्यादा आ गया, रिजर्वर में ही पानी भर गया, they have to release the water, they have no other alternative. At least they should warn the people over there, no, who are living in the lower region, थोड़ा सा रिवर से दूर चले जाओ, फ्लडिंग हो सकता है तो बच के रहो, ऐसे वार्निंग देना चाहिए. That is what is flood forecasting and warning. Okay, this is very much required for response. Okay, this is a pre-disaster ka. At the same time, during the disaster, we need emergency response. If at all there is a flooding situation, how to do? People should be training. Emergency response and training. Emergency response and training. So this is all our guidelines given by NDMA. NDMA का जो measures है ना, water management measure, these are the ones. Please keep this in mind. जितना हो सके उतना याद रख के लिखना. Challenges faced in flood management in India. So these are the NDMA guidelines. इसके अलावा एक दो और भी लिख सकते हो, जैसे कि environmental flow. Environmental flow का मतलब क्या? Ecological flow. Every river requires certain minimum level of water. Minimum level of water होना ही चाहिए to protect its river ecology. That is what is called as environmental flow or ecological flow. वो जरूरी है. That ensures that the river ecology is maintained, the sand bars are maintained, है ना, थोड़ा सा healthy ecosystem बना के रहेगा, so that it will not overflow very frequently. What are the challenges in dealing with flood management in India? The most important challenge is establishment of floodplain zoning. Floodplain zoning is the most important challenge. कैसे? इंडिया में इतना पॉपुलेशन है, पता नहीं कहां से किस डायरेक्शन में ऑक्यूपाई करेंगे, खाली जगह छोड़ो ऑक्यूपाई करके बैठेंगे. It's totally difficult. You cannot impose that. For that you need a very strict political will, strong political will चाहिए. Because most of the people who have occupied the river plains, flood plains, you know, they are the people with power. First challenge, lack of implementation of floodplain zoning. Second challenge, lack of awareness about response and safety. Lack of awareness about response and safety. Okay, there's not much measures have been taken to train the people about the incidence of flood. Lack of forecasting and warning system. Lack of forecasting and warning system. And most importantly, for this particularly floodplain zoning के लिए ना, you need contour maps. What is contour map? मैपिंग ऑफ द लैंड एज पर द स्लोप, उसको बोलते हैं कॉन्टूर मैप्स. दे आर नॉट इजीली अवेलेबल. When the contour maps are not available, how can they classify as per the elevation? Floodplain zoning के लिए contour maps are very much required. Is that clear? क्या क्या डिस्कस किया? What is flood? What are the causes of flood? Both are natural as well as anthropogenic. The regions of flooding in India, flood management as per NDMA guidelines, and then challenges. Now let's talk about a very specific type of flood called urban flood. Urban floods. What is urban floods? Contour map. Contour map क्या है? What is contour? Contour is the land slope. So to classify these as per the flooding probability, flooding zoning का probability के accordingly classify करना है तो you need to understand the slope. कहाँ पर slope variation रहता है, that is what is contour. You need to have a detailed contour map of that particular region in order to classify, in order to do the floodplain zoning. So usually they are not available. They are not usually available for general public or private persons के लिए easily available नहीं होता है. Urban floods. What do you mean by urban floods? Flooding in the urban areas. Flooding in the urban areas is called as urban floods. See, usually the natural floods, they happen in those regions wherever there are rivers. Rivers जहां पर होता है तो वहां पर flooding होना अलग बात है. We can understand. But in the recent times we have been seeing that cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, they are continuously facing urban floods. Mumbai में तो कोई river नहीं है. There is an ocean on the other side. It's not like the ocean water is coming on this side. Bangalore में कोई river नहीं है. Hyderabad, Musi river very small, बहुत छोटा है. It cannot cause flooding. But still, why the number of occurrence of urban floods have increased in these cities? क्यों flooding इतना ज़्यादा हो गया है? What are the reasons behind increased occurrence of urban flooding in the recent times? Cloudburst, drainage system, get overflow, unplanned drainage system, clogging of drainage system. I'm sure most of you, whoever lives in urban regions, the unlucky fellows, unless you are living in rural area, you would have experienced the urban floods at one point of the other time or the other. And you would have experienced the urban flooding at one point of time or the other. कभी ना कभी होगा ही होगा. Urban heat island effect, good. Deforestation, unplanned drainage, ignoring the buildings and planning regulations. Let me tell you what are the reasons behind the increased number of urban flooding. Whether it is Bangalore or Chennai or Mumbai or Hyderabad or Pune or Patna. Unlike the natural flooding, urban flooding are majorly anthropogenic. It is anthropogenic only, totally anthropogenic. Nature has no discrimination when it comes to flooding between urban और rural. ऐसे तो discrimination नहीं करेंगे, हम तो करेंगे urban area urban वाले ऐसे बोल के. So whatever the reason it is just anthropogenic. So what are the reasons? Poor drainage system. Before that, excessive concrete surface. Excessive concrete surface. This is the major difference between the urban region and rural region, right? Concrete surface इतना ज़्यादा रहता है, the water which falls on this will never get absorbed. It flows. Because of which the drainage system of the entire urban region is totally disturbed. The water flows very easily and they get accumulate and they flow in a large quantity. Usually urban cities, wherever the urban cities are there, urban regions are there, usually earlier there were different channels to hold these waters. For example, Bangalore. Bangalore, once upon a time, it was called as the city of lakes. Okay, there were 20, 30, 40 lakes were there. Large number of lakes were there. Now we are left with only few lakes, 3-4 lakes, major lakes. बाकी सारा encroach हो गया है. पहले था. So these lakes earlier used to act as the storage for excessive water. जो excessive पानी गिरता था ना, it used to go and store over there. ये तो सारा convert हो गया. All the bunds, everything is removed. First tendency, the water tries to find its natural path to these storage lakes जो हो गया, ponds हो गया, उसको पकड़ने का कोशिश करता है. So that is the first reason why the low-lying areas gets flooded. In most of the urbanized region, जो fast urbanized हुआ है in the recent times, like Bangalore, Hyderabad and all, they're all wherever the new colonies have been made, new buildings are constructed, they're all those places where there was some kind of lake or river channel was there. क्योंकि land का बहुत कमी है. ये सारा ऑक्यूपाई करके कंस्ट्रक्ट किया है वहां पर. अब एक्सेसिव बारिश आएगा तो वहीं पे जाएगा ना, wherever there is a low land, so they get flooded very easily. Second, इसका और कुछ इलाज भी है. So they know that the water will flow, they will change the direction. यहां से यहां पूरा निकाल के पूरा जो नेचुरल ड्रेनेज पाता है उसको डिस्टर्ब कर देता है. So that results in flooding in other regions also. जो नेचुरली नहीं होना था वहां पर भी हो जाएगा. And because of high population and migration, people do not have enough money to afford better place. They occupy these low land areas, which are usually slums or low quality constructions, which can easily get impacted by such kind of water accumulation. And then trees are totally devoid, trees are totally removed, तो पानी का absorption भी नहीं होगा ना. There is more surface runoff. Deforestation and removal of trees increases the surface runoff. Most importantly, there is also an effect called urban heat island. What is urban heat island? In urban region, the heat which are released from various buildings, है ना, बहुत सारा ऐसे हम यूज करते हैं. एसी हो गया, फ्रिज हो गया, वॉशिंग मशीन हो गया. तो बहुत सारा ऐसे यूज करते हैं इक्विपमेंट्स which releases a lot of heat, है ना, इससे lot of heat is released. But this heat, through continuous reflection of radiation between the different buildings, they get trapped here only. The heat released in the urban region gets trapped because of the continuous deflection. So the overall in this entire urban region, the temperature increases. Bit of evaporation also happens. And in addition to that, if you bring other clouds, huge clouds are formed, causing cloud burst over there because of the increase in the heat. That is what we call it as urban heat island effect. The heat is trapped as islands here and there. Okay, very easy. Like if you come from outside the city to inside city, suddenly you can feel the temperature variation. Any of the major cities, Delhi mein ho gaya, Mumbai mein ho gaya, you can easily feel that. Urban heat island. It causes the micro changes in the climate and increased rainfall, cloud bursts. फिर ये भी लिखो लेक एनक्रोचमेंट्स मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट रीजन है. एग्जाम्पल हैदराबाद, चेन्नई. चेन्नई में इतना सारा कैसे हो सकता है? मोस्ट ऑफ द लेक्स, बिकॉज चेन्नई देयर इज अ लिमिटेशन ऑफ लैंड, दे कैन नॉट मूव टुवर्ड्स द ओशन. वहां तरफ तो नहीं जा सकते. दे हैव एक्सपॉन्डेड रैपिडली ऑन द अदर साइड एंड दे हैव कन्वर्टेड ऑल द लेक्स इनटू द सेटलमेंट्स. चेन्नई में 4 साल पहले जब फ्लड्स आया था ना, इट्स सच ए बिग, इट वाज देयर फॉर नियरली ए वीक. बहुत ज्यादा इश्यू है. वाटर स्केसिटी भी है एंड पानी एक्सेसिव बारिश हो गया तो ऐसे फ्लडिंग भी हो जाता है. एंड इन मोस्ट ऑफ द सिटीज द municipalities, the corporations, they don't work efficiently. हमें पता है वो कैसे काम करते हैं. It is important that they clean all these drainage channels before the monsoon. मानसून के पहले जो भी ये जो ड्रेनेज जो सॉलिड वेस्ट बचा होता है ना, उसको निकालना है. सॉलिड वेस्ट पोल्यूशन के वजह से फ्लडिंग ज्यादा होता है. ऑल दिस प्लास्टिक कंटेनर, ये सारा चीजें जो होता है ना, दे ब्लॉक दिस ड्रेनेज चैनल्स. That will block them and that will cause more flooding. It will not let the water pass through. Underground drainage system जो है ना, उससे पानी easily नहीं निकलता है. Storm water drainage system बोलते हैं ना, they are not maintained well. So these are the reasons behind urban floods. There are certain mechanism for management of urban floods as per NDMA. We'll discuss in the next class. Okay, next class would be the last one, where we will be discussing about the measures required for managing the urban floods, then the cloud burst, and then drought and few other disasters. They are important from UPSC's context. So any doubts? Okay, I guess not much doubts are there. I'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much.